Not yet, no.
Some people did. I got I don't know, about 130 views on day one, which isn't bad.
I watched a couple today because I had to leave 20 minutes early yesterday, so I wrapped it up yesterday.
Cool, good. All right, so what he's saying is he went to a page layout. We haven't discussed any of this yet. I think I had Verdi in a class at some point, did I not?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Okay, through Simple Learning.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's correct.
Let's say I look at an opportunity record here, and I go to the page layout. There are buttons in the page layout, and those buttons are only in Classic. See these down here?
Mm-hmm.
So if you need a button, you got to come over here in box 1, and they're your Lightning and mobile experience actions down here.
Okay.
So yeah, I always have the buttons in the page, but I seldom go back to Classic anymore. It used to be that I never wanted to be in Lightning.
Uh-huh.
So try that with whatever you were doing. Okay, everybody, welcome back once again. I guess I'll go ahead and get started. We got quite a few in here, considering I think the last class we had 12, so that's good. Let's see, where did we stop? Anybody remember where we were? I think we were on like user interface, weren't we? So
yeah, it was user interface, Ryan.
Yep. So I think I'm going to go to Trailhead here. We'll pull up our study guide. Everybody can log into their Trailhead account here. Did everybody try the homework?
Yeah.
Always a catch. Let's see. I'm going to put in the single use code here. No. These verifications drive me nuts. Did not get it. Oh, it's because I got it in. It went to the different email. There we go. Okay. 438. Now this won't be the right code. 438675. All right. And that was not right. So it's probably another one. 604628. Good time. 628. This is good television right here. All right, so we'll go into our trailhead here. Did anybody have any questions? Everybody get them done? If not, you can do them in the meantime between the next class or even after. Any questions before we move on? I can always come back at the beginning of some other class if you have questions, so don't be afraid to ask. I'm going to go into the admin cert here. Now keep in mind that we're learning both. We're learning admin and app builder here because the tests are almost exactly the same. I'm going to grab our study guide. That's what we've been working from. Let's do a little bit of review. So come down here to the outline section. And we said org setup. Describe the information found in company settings. What are they talking about here? Can somebody click path me?
Yeah, I think I can.
Go ahead.
So setup in the search bar. You're going to go ahead and type in company information.
Down here, company settings, and then company information.
Correct.
And then there were some key points of this page that we discussed.
Yeah, so a couple of those key points you're going to looking for is called the default locale.
Okay.
As well as the org and the instance.
Okay, what is the locale?
That's like the date, the time, the name, the number, address, and the geolocation.
Yeah, so the test question there will be like blah, 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 locale, question mark, right? If you see that keyword locale, you can have a locale on the company information page, but you might also have, for a user, a different locale if they're somewhere else in the world. What this has to do is, it has to do with formatting. Date fields are written differently depending on where you're at on planet Earth. So date, time, name, number, address, and geolocation are all possible answers in the answer set. It'll be a choose 3 out of 5 situation.
You should not. Or, hey, this happened.
Let me see here.
Tell him
Who
what
is that?
happened.
I am going to call him and tell him.
Ah,
He
all right.
shouldn't be doing that to other people, you know? He should know that better. He should know, like, what is
Sorry, I'm trying to see who's speaking. If you're not,
other people.
could you please everybody mute for me?
There's a warning there. It said clearly
There
that
it is. I found it. Okay. So we also had on the company information page, you mentioned the org. What's an org?
The org is like our apartment in that multi-tenant structure.
That's right. That's our apartment. And if you think about that ID, that is the unique identifier on Salesforce's object called org or something. So it points directly to our apartment. What were our additions?
It was essential, professional, and unlimited, and then we have another one.
Developer, right?
Yes.
So you've got essentials, that's 25. Professional, that's what, 75? Lightning is the lightning experience is 150. And then the unlimited is 300. Dev org is free. All good stuff to know. Can I activate multiple currencies?
Yes, you can.
Yes, we can activate multiple currencies. We check the box. You used to have to send a ticket. I don't know if you have to do that anymore. What's the currency locale?
Like what's the monetary you mean? Like versus
That's correct. Now, the key points here from the exam standpoint. If it says currency locale here, that means that you're a single currency organization. You only have one currency for the entire org. If you activate multiple, it will be called the default currency. So know the difference between those two terms. A currency locale means it's single currency. A default currency means that you've activated multiple currencies. That's a good one to remember. What's the instance?
that's where the data is being held.
Yep, it's somebody else's computer, whoever's computer that is in some data center, probably in San Francisco if you're in the States. I think in India it's NA4. I see all kinds of them. A7P. Since I do a lot of international training, I see a lot of those different instances. What's a license?
A license is what gives you access to the org.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a seat. It's a username and a password. And we can see that we've got total, used, and remaining. So what I would have you memorize before you take the exam is memorize the names of the standard user licenses. Where are you going to find that? We'll come up here to help in training. And in documentation, search user I can never spell license. I still spelled it wrong. Okay, user licenses, there we go. And then look for the standard ones here. Now you don't have to memorize everything they do, but know the names, because the test question you might see on the admin exam would be, which of these are standard user licenses? They'll give you a choice of 5, you'll have to choose 3. Something along those lines. So know that, go through and make sure you know what these are, write them down a few times until you know the names of the licenses themselves. From an effectiveness standpoint, there's 2 that are used most often, at least currently in my experience. I'm sure other people might have different ones that are important in their orgs, but generally speaking, for all the orgs that I work with, they're using the Salesforce license, which is the full license, and they're also using this platform license. So the Salesforce license is the full tool. The platform license only gives you custom applications. So you have to build the app from scratch. You can't use the opportunity object. So it's less money and less functionality. So be careful when you're creating users. Don't make users platform when you don't want them to be, or you're going to have problems seeing what's going on. So that's what I would do as far as user licenses. Questions on any of that? What about fiscal year? Key points. What was our keyword for a standard fiscal year?
Choose to 445.
For standard, it's Gregorian. And this keyword is specific to the fiscal year. You will not see it used anywhere else in the Salesforce ecosystem. So if you see that Gregorian keyword, you know they're talking about standard fiscal year. And that means you're just picking the start month and then whether it's based on the ending month or the starting month. That's a standard fiscal year. And your bean counters, your accountants are going to be able to tell you which one, what they want that to be. If you cannot meet your requirement with the Gregorian calendar standard fiscal year, then you have to go to custom. Well, the keywords on that one was 445 and 13 weeks or 13 periods. It's saying 2 4-week months and a 5-week month, or 4 quarters with 13 weeks, right? So any of that stuff you see, they're talking custom. What if I switch to custom?
And you cannot go back to standard fiscal year.
You cannot go back. See, enabling custom fiscal years is not reversible. So, but you can configure a custom to meet the requirements of the standard. That is all. I mean, you're going to see that test question for sure. So be aware of the keywords here and the differences between them. Business hours, what are those?
The hours your support team will be available.
Very good. Those are the hours that our support team is available. They are not hours of operation. I tell you about red flags when I'm consulting. If I go into an org and I see that they have their hours of operation in the business hours, I know somebody didn't know what they were doing. That's a red flag. That's as much of a red flag as going into the company information page and seeing 25 licenses purchased, but they're only using 3. That's a very good indicator that it's going to be a mess. What about holidays? They're the same as business hours. You're marking certain dates for holidays to where it's limiting those support hours as far as escalation based on that holiday. Currency management we discussed a little. There's also what they might call advanced currency management. That's where if you have an open and a closed op, they're not going to change if they're closed. And the conversion rates are based on a date range. That would be considered advanced currency management. As I said, default settings, I've never been able to figure out what these mean unless they're talking about the stuff we just discussed, like locale, time zone, org ID, that sort of thing. I've never been able to search this and figure out what they mean. Distinguish between different UI features. Does anybody remember where these were?
User interface.
User interface. So we'll go to setup, user interface, and user interface. Nothing like a little redundancy. There we go. And it's just a group of checkboxes here. There were some I told you to remember. Anybody tell me those?
One of them is the collapse, right?
Let me get my pen up here. So yeah, we have show quick create. That was on the old classic. They had quick create. That used to be in the answer set. I'd be kind of surprised if it was still there because it is classic functionality. But anything with hover for sure. Because there's like 5 things on this list with hover. So if you see anything in an answer set with hover, because the question will be like, blah, 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 user interface. And they'll have 5 choices. You got to choose 3. Which one of these are a user interface setting? Another thing they'll want you to know is that they're always global, meaning they're on or off for everybody. So anything with hover. Inline editing, does anybody remember that one?
Yep.
Inline editing means what?
You can edit the field right inside the record.
Yeah, it looks like this. If I go into a record, ooh, run slow. Something's taking up a lot of RAM. Maybe I got too much open here. Okay. So if I go into a record, inline editing is saying the following. There we go. Go into a record. It's saying that if you go to the details section, you see this pencil? That's inline editing. Otherwise, you would have to edit the record up here to make the change. So it's a nice little productivity feature. What was enhanced lists? Enhanced lists are the little pencil on list views. These are global user interface settings that are either on or off for everybody. You can play around with those if you wish. You can go and try and turn off inline editing, go to a record and look. But we had inline editing, enhanced lists, anything with hover. What else did we say?
Printable lists, right?
Printable list views, that's the little icon on the list view that allows you to print. Collapsible sidebar used to be one. It used to be that the sidebar was, you could make it collapsible in Classic and it would hide from people. Now it's already collapsible. I guess it isn't. They just leave it up here because you're in setup mode, I guess. But that one's not really super important anymore. Let's see. User interface.
Someone said variable list views. Is that right, or did I make that word up?
That would be enhanced lists.
Oh, enhanced lists. Okay.
Being able to change a list view, printable list views, collapsible sidebar used to be one. There's some more with hover down here. I think that's probably a good start on those. What was our search settings? No one ever remembers this one.
Your records, the standard or custom records to appear in global search.
Yeah, if you remember, we went to the app. That's very good. There's a lot of, it's because it's really search layouts is why people get confused. They say search settings, but if you go to the object manager for any object, you'll see that it's actually search layouts. What we did is we went into the application and we searched using the global search bar, and we had the return results. If I type in VURL with a wildcard here, that returned everything itemized by object or table. And then we removed the account site field. You see that? Hopefully everybody remembers that. That is called search layouts. And as with anything else object related, you're going to do that in the object manager under search layouts and managers. Questions there? Doing pretty good. Okay. What's the list view?
It's the view of the app, right?
Well, you got to be in the app to see a list view. A list view is on every home tab. So for every object, there is a tab for up here. If you click on that object, the list view is this thing up here at the top of the screen. Right now I'm looking at recently viewed. If you hit the little drop down here, you can see there's more standard and custom list views. These things can be sorted and filtered based on what you need. Currently, recently viewed is pinned. And I like to do that because users can just go to the list view. It's pinned to the top, and that's the one they see. And whatever they were recently looking at will show up. There are others. We can manage. Some of them can be managed. even the standard ones. But some of the standard ones cannot be managed or changed. In this case, I can't change recently viewed. Let's go to the lead object and look. Recently viewed on leads. I could choose some other list view like all open. Now all open is a standard out of the box list view, but it does allow you to make changes here. What changes can we make? Well, we can add fields or we can filter the list. So I'm going to create a new one under leads, and I'm going to call it technology leads. And then down here, this is what's called sharing. We're going to use what they call the sharing model to share this list view. Now, Salesforce will get all excited and tell you that users are allowed to create list views. And yet they are, but it's not a good idea. A lot of the orgs that I get into have users creating list views, and what happens is it defaults here. So what happens then is now I have a list view list with like 1 million of these Bobs and Steves and Terrys and Jims, and nobody knows, nobody knew what they were doing. They're using limited data sets. They don't know how to filter properly. So you got to be careful about giving this power away. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up here. So right now I had it set to only I, but let's do all users. We could also share using the sharing model and share access to only users that need it. We'll talk more about security a little later. So I'm going to make it for all users and save here. So now I have this brand new list view called technology leads. So I'll come back over to the cog, and I might want to change the fields that are displayed. Here are the fields from left to right here. Those are all pretty good, so I'll leave them. But I would want to see the industry. I didn't see if that was on there. I don't think it was. So I'm going to add the industry field so I can see it. So I'll go back to fields here and I'll add industry. That's fine. Maybe up here. And I'll just kind of play with it until it looks right. Or I might sit down with the user as I'm building these and be like, what do you think looks better, this or this? And I'll just make it perfect to their needs. Okay, so there we go. A lot of these don't have an industry. So now I need to filter it. I have the fields I want in the list view. Now I need to filter it. So I'm going to filter this thing by adding a list filter. And instead of my leads, I want to open it up to everybody. So I'm going to choose all. I had a limited data set there if I had other users that owned records. So I'll make it all leads. And then I'm going to add another filter, and I'm going to say if the industry equals, and then here's the industry pick list on that lead. Let's say it's technology. So I had a nice wide open data set, and then I filtered it. It looks like I didn't do it right. There we go. And be sure that you hit save or it won't take. Does anybody know why I don't have a value here?
Yeah, because none of the fields are associated to technology, right?
Yeah, nothing has an industry of technology. So what I'll do is I'll come back into all leads here, and I'll just change one to technology. Inline editing there. There we go. So now I have one. I can go back to my leads homepage. And I'm going to go to my technology leads list view. And there we are. So what I would like for everybody to do right now, will take a couple of minutes. If you could go ahead and create the technology leads list view. Would anybody like to demo for the sake of the recording? Well, we can all sit here and stare at this screen, but I think it's better for people to see someone working. Anybody want to volunteer? All right. Let's see. How about you, Verdi?
Okay, I'll try.
So all you got to do is click share on the app. Zoom is better than WebEx, I think. So I think I have to unshare. There you go. And then you can share yours now.
Share screen. Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, so I gotta
Creating the technology leads list view.
Mm-hmm. It's got a leads.
What's he doing wrong, everybody?
So it's got apps.
Yeah, you're in setup mode. It's that annoying little thing about Lightning where they won't let you search the app if you're in setup.
Yeah, it's just slow. I don't know why it's so slow.
Well, it's the sharing tool. It slows everything down. We'll just give it a minute. Well, see all that stuff you have open up top too? That's killing your RAM.
It's killing it, yeah.
That'll make you really slow too. You do enough these projects, you'll get out of that habit in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because that used to be me.
Okay.
But Lightning requires a lot of RAM these days. This component-based development is if you have 8 gigs of RAM, it's minimum, and you're going to run really slow. You really want to optimize your machine. If you can get 16 gigs of RAM, do it. If you can get the more cores, the better.
Right. So I got a new.
Yep.
And you said technology.
Technology leads. Everybody else, if you just give me a yes in chat when you're finished.
And it was all users? I don't remember.
Yeah, just do all users.
Okay.
In a perfect world, you wouldn't do that unless everybody needs to see it, right?
Right.
A lot of times I'll do this just with groups of users. It's usually based around the role hierarchy, how I would share there.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so let's add the field, or you can do the filter first, but don't forget that my leads filter. Well, it would depend, right? If everybody's working the leads together, then you want all. If it's you only want them to see their own, then my, but you can see how that does limit the data set, my versus all on that filter up top. See where it says filter by owner, my leads?
Hear me?
Nope.
Where is it?
Right under filters. See the little X below your cursor?
Yeah.
All right, now go down a little more. See filter by owner?
Okay.
Click on that. Nope, up one. Up one block there. There you go. Click on that, the my leads component.
Okay.
Right there. There it is. That's it. Click on that. Make it all leads.
Okay.
See that? That's your first filter. Then add your second, hit done, and then add filter. It's kind of tricky at first.
Okay, yeah, it's not obvious. It's pretty, yeah.
And then we're going to do industry equals technology.
Okay.
So the industry field.
I'm just going to. Oh, you can't search for it.
Yeah, industry. Oh, you're trying to search. I see.
Industry, there is industry equals
Technology. So click on that and you'll get the pick list values. This is really nice because you can't misspell it. This is just a pick list field on the lead object.
you can have multiples as well. You can just select more than one.
Hit done. The little done, it hides right there. Done. And then you have to hit save as well. Make sure you hit save in the top right-hand corner.
Right.
There we go. Now it should run and you won't have any values. So at that point, all you got to do is go and add technology as an industry to any lead in the app.
So I just pick any lead.
Yep, go to any lead record. That's good. Yeah, choose the all leads list view. And then just choose one and make it technology as far as the industry. Now, you'll have to remember to go to the details tab on the record page because they have this thing poorly set up, in my opinion. The record pages out of the box are atrocious, especially if you work with people. I'm going to take it back from you. Especially if you work with people. Here we go. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Wasn't that important anyway. So you can have multiple list views. You can have multiple filters. I believe it's up to 10. That's a limit question. The number of filters you can have on a list view. There's also what they call complex filter logic involved with this. So if you have multiple filters, you can add filter logic. And that's like 1 and 2 or 3 in parentheses. You'll see this quite a bit, and or. So keep in mind that you can do that. But these things are integral to a successful org. I can't tell you how many times I come in and they are not using list views. Usually because they're letting users create them, and they end up with these list views that are like, 30 miles long, and Bob's and Tim's and Steve's and John's and Sam's, and nobody knows which ones to use. So less is always more. We talked about the plunge.
So, hey, Ryan, real
Yep.
quick while you're drawing that. So,
Sure.
like a real user case in this instance would be if I was the admin and let's say, John Doe said, hey, Tori, I need you to set up a list for me for technology leads. The most thing I would make sure I would click is that only user one, right?
Well,
What I said.
okay, so here's my thought process. You remember my drawing here, productivity over time.
Yeah.
At the moment of implementation, we know there's going to be a dip, right? Regardless.
Right.
So what I do is I turn everything off and I have as few list views as possible to start. Just the standard ones, essentially. All, recently viewed,
Right.
so forth and so on. So then as we're moving through here, they're going to be like, hey, can I get a list view that says blah, 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 blah? And the first thing I'm going to ask is, why? Because users, especially sales users, but users in general, are notorious for trying to solve one-off, very rare situations. They want solutions for problems they don't really have. So what I want to find out by the why question is there already something there that's doing that and they just don't know about it? If that's not the case, then I would say, would everybody need to see this list view? Most likely they'd be like, yeah, that'd be nice to see. So then I'll toss it in there for everybody. But especially early on in the process, so for me, there's always one process that's the most important, and I want to nail it down immediately. Like as we're plunging, the whole point in our case is going to be to get the sales process handled. What's the sales process?
In which you have prospects and you narrow it down to leads. Actually,
Okay.
you have leads and then you narrow it down to prospects and then they turn into potential customers.
Right. So what I'm doing is think of like a business process flow. You start out here and then something happens and then there's a decision that gets made and there's a yes that happens and there's a no that happens and we're going on, so forth and so on until we've got every eventuality planned out and understand exactly what a customer experience is going to look like. And that's what I'm trying to nail down. But what happens is users, stakeholders, middle management, doesn't matter who they are, they always don't understand that I'm doing one process at a time. They see everything as one big process, and they're partially right, but I'm trying to isolate things down into their pieces, doing the most important work first. In our case, it's getting that sales process handled. So if they're asking me for stuff here that has to do with cases and we're not even using that object, then no, right? Let's phase that. We're going to do that up here somewhere. So let's table that until then. You know, have a running list, but I'm not going to go and just start doing everything they want me to do here, because what it does is if I just do what they tell me and create a bunch of workarounds, this gets a lot deeper and this gets a lot wider. What I'm trying to do is the opposite. I'm trying to shorten the amplitude and the frequency of the plunge. And I do that by staying as simple as possible with as little functionality as I can. And I want to operate manually. I want them to physically do it. By the time they get here and they're calling it the system, I will have no automation in place. I'm not automating anything until I know they know how to do it manually, because that's the important part. They need to understand the whys of everything. So I use this known area of strife as an opportunity to create a well-functioning, simple application that's a really good baseline for us to start off with. Because inevitably what happens is after we get the sales process nailed down, immediately they say, hey, wait, okay, this was awesome. Let's do the marketing side. Okay, well, tell me what you do. And then I'm right back to business requirements gathering, right? Any questions here? Okay. Let's see. Homepage layouts we'll discuss later. These used to be in Classic, there was a homepage layout, but in Lightning, we use what's called a record page. So we'll talk about that later on. User setup. So there you go. 3% of the exam underway. Let's see, do I have any chat? Let's see. Okay, good. Thanks, Tori. Tori's the only one that listened and said done. Is everybody finished with the technology leads list view? Anybody need more time? Okay. I'm just teasing you guys. So, user setup. What's a user?
Individual that's using the system.
Okay.
Or the org.
So what does that mean they have?
They have a license, have a username, password.
That's right. So a user is usually internal. They now have external user licenses where I can have customers and partners log into my org as customers and partners. So it's not across the board, but users, generally speaking, for our purposes, are going to be internal folks that are using the platform. We're going to find users under users, and then once again, users. Anybody remember how many user licenses we have that are Salesforce licenses?
2.
2. We're using 1, right? So here I am. That's you. If you hit edit next to yourself, it takes you to what I call the user detail record. You will also hear it referred to as the user profile, but beware of using that word because there's something else in Salesforce called a profile, and I don't want you to get confused. I will always call it the user detail record. If you see user profile, they're talking about the user detail record. If they say users profile, they're talking about something completely different. What do the red lines mean?
That's stuff you have to fill in.
Mandatory.
Required fields, yes. So which one is blatantly missing here?
Role.
Well, in actuality, it is a required field, but there's a value called unspecified. Do you see how first name is not required? There's an exam question that might say, which of these are required fields on the user detail record, the user profile? And one of the answers in the answer set will inevitably be first name. It is not. It's a trick question. So remember that. I would ask you to memorize the required fields on a user record, but you're not going to see them in their totality on our record because we're an admin and we're stuck with this admin profile here. So I'm going to save this, and what we're going to do together is we're going to create a new user by selecting the new user button here. So manage users, select the new user button, and we're going to create a new user here. We're going to call him Joe Employee. I'm going to use my email address. What's the difference between a username and an email address?
The username can be anything. The email is where you're going to associate. I like to say forgot password, but I know that's not the right
Login
answer.
credentials. You had it, man. You had it. The login credentials is the only term you were missing there.
Okay.
The email is where your login credentials and communication comes to. The username is the username. Must be in the form of a email.
Email.
Now, I've had thousands of students, all with Joe Employee. So you're going to have to get creative with your username here, because there's literally been thousands of people create a username Joe Employee. Everyone must be unique. So create a username for Joe, make it in the form of an email. And then your nickname is your community nickname. So it should look something like this. Make sure this username, well, first make sure it goes to your email address here. That's important because we're going to continue to use Joe throughout the rest of the class. Make sure that your username is unique and in the form of an email. If it's not unique and somebody else has tried it, it'll tell you. You'll get a little error message from a validation rule. The role is going to be none specified. The license is going to be the Salesforce license. Don't choose platform. That's limited functionality. We want the Salesforce license with the profile of custom sales. We'll talk more about security a tad later. So you'll notice that role, user license, and profile are all required. So we've got last name, alias, email, username, nickname, role, user license, and profile. There's a few more down here. Email encoding, time zone, locale. This is exactly the same as on the company settings, but it's for the user. So the user can have a locale, and the company settings can have a completely different locale, and Salesforce is going to do the mental gymnastics for us there. There's also receive email approval requests. So all of those are fair game for that test question. All these red line required fields. So everybody, if you could, let's go ahead and create a user for Joe, filling it out as I have here. Go ahead and type done into the chat when you're finished. And in the meantime, I'll talk a little more about users in the background here for the recording's sake. So first priority is getting this done. Second priority, listening. The active checkbox. This is very important right here. You'll notice that at the top of the page, what you will not see when you hit save is a delete button. We cannot delete users in Salesforce. This makes sense because just because someone left my company does not mean that I do not want them to be accounted for in the platform. So they have a user license that exists. They did something on a record. I want that to remain. So instead of deleting users, what we do is we deactivate them by unchecking the box. Once people catch up here, we'll try this. But we'll just go to edit, uncheck the box for active, save, and then we'll go back and look at company settings, and you'll see that that license is freed up as it was before. So under company information, oops, in the wrong place. Yeah, I was in the right place, company settings. So one available, one remaining. If I go back to Joe and activate him, did everybody get Joe created? Anybody need more time? This is not the time to skip an exercise. We're going to use Joe throughout. Okay, looking good, looking good. See, now he's active. If you go back to your company information page, you'll now see that that license has been freed up. Or I'm used up, excuse me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a couple of tricks to eliminate redundancies of logging in, etc. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is go to security and setup, and we're going to look for password policies right here. So setup, security, and password policies. And we're going to reduce the maximum login attempts to 3. So this is where we set up a global password policy for everybody in the org. How many characters does it have to be? How long does it remain in effect? How many attempts before they get logged out? I want you to set that to login attempts to 3. So set up security and password policies, and then set that to 3. So then you should have by now probably received to your email Joe's login credentials if you did everything properly. And what we're going to do is go ahead and verify Joe. So go to your email. The profile for Joe was set to custom sales profile. Question was, what was the profile type on the user detail record? Answer is what? It would be the custom sales profile. So once we get into our email here, we're going to verify our account much like we did for ourselves. Just use the same password you used for yourself. Make sure that it's Joe up here. And then create a password for Joe. Same thing you used for yourself. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I can't spell it though. C-I-N-C-I-N-N-A-T-I. There we go. And there he is. So now I'm logged in as Joe. You can see you're logged in as Joe up here. Does anybody notice anything weird about this?
It's switched to classic.
Yeah, he's in classic. And he can't switch right now. So currently Joe does not have the permissions to switch to classic. That's something we're going to have to address later. But see, I've logged in as Joe here with his credentials. So I'm going to log out as Joe and I want to log back in as myself.
Is it because of the license?
It's his profile. His profile is not set up to have Lightning experience.
All right.
It's part of the exercises we do in class, so no worries. We'll show you how to do it. Okay, so now I'm myself. Well, how would I go? Do you think it's important to be able to log in as your user and see it from their perspective?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's very important. And that's pretty much what I do as an admin and developer is I call it putting on my Joe goggles, right? I do some administration work as the admin, and then I put on my Joe goggles and I look at it as the user and make sure that what I did actually worked. So if I wanted to log in as my user, what would I need to know right now?
The credentials for Joe?
Yeah, is that safe? Is that secure?
If you are an admin, then you have to know his credentials.
Well, I don't though. See, so if I make a change, so what I'm going to show you how to do now is how to log in as a user. What it does, it allows me to log in as a user, but it still attributes the changes to me. You can see that I was logged in as them when I made the change. So that way people don't have to worry about an admin stealing their username and password and then, you know, making them look bad or something, right? Or some bad actor getting a hold of that information and then making them look bad as far as their credentials. So there is a way that we do this. I want to be able to log in as any user. So we're going to go to security, and then we're going to go to login access policies. Now you got to make sure you're yourself. Make sure you're in Lightning here. But I'm going to go to login access policies. And then I'm going to choose administrators can log in as any user right here. Check that box and save. So it was set up, login access policies in security. Administrators can log in as any user and check the box. Desired outcome here is when you go to manage users and users, you should now see a little link that says log in as Joe. And what you can do at that point is log in as Joe. So now I'm Joe. I don't know what his password is. I mean, I created his password, but I didn't have to use it. I'm logged in as Joe. So everybody give that a shot. Let me know when you get there.
Ryan, this is Sarah. I have a question. So
Sure.
when you log in as Joe, so you have all that access that Joe has, or is just restricted and limited into some specific permission?
It's restricted to what Joe has access and permission to see.
Okay.
So I am virtually Joe right now, but the system knows I'm logged in as Joe. See?
Right.
So that way I can make a change. If a user has an issue, I can see it as them. It's like, okay, I see the problem, and then I can work and solve their issue. I do this all the time. I mean, it's a lot of what I do, frankly, once you get the thing built.
Brian,
Yeah.
yours is still in Classic. Mine, when I logged in as Joe, I was able to, it did actually put me in Lightning. Is that
Okay.
supposed to happen?
What profile did you choose?
Oh, yep, it's the profile.
Change them to the custom sales profile.
Yep. Okay. Now that's a follow-up question. Can I change the custom profile on Joe if I'm logged in as Joe, or do I have
Nope.
to do that
Well,
on the admin side?
That would depend on security. So we're getting to the point now where we're going to start talking about security.
Okay.
So security is everything, right? If you don't understand security, you cannot be an admin. Impossible. And nobody understands security. Very, very few people truly get security. It's always a weakness because it's the hardest part of the curriculum, and it's only 12% of the exam. So essentially, people can skip it and still get certified. So there are a lot of certified pros out there that don't understand security, and it's a huge problem. Trust me. I spend a lot of time untying that shoestring where people didn't know what they were doing as far as security and do horrible workarounds. Did everybody get here?
Hey, Ryan, and even on that exam, security is like one of the hardest
Oh, yeah.
questions you're going to get. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I did a few days ago, and I know security is one of the hardest questions you're going to get.
It's the hardest. So what we're going to do in this class is we're going to go over it over and over and over and demo it and talk about it and go over it and demo it and talk about it until we feel comfortable. The class, the folks, right? See, a lot of these curriculums, they give you like 4 slides on security because they don't think you can learn it anyway. But I've got a way of teaching it that makes it a little easier to digest, and the repetition and demonstration really, really helps. So if everybody gets here, the problem now is going to be if I log out as Joe, now I got to log back in as myself, which, you know, you do it once, it's a little annoying, but if you have to do it 100 times a day, that eats up a lot of time. So the next setting, I think I fat fingered that. Oh, it worked. The next setting that I'm going to show you here, see how I'm policing my windows up here? Get in the habit of doing that. Because Lightning's going to be slow unless you got 16 gigs and multiple, you know, more than 4 more cores. Lightning is going to run slow for you these days. And it gets annoying. But anyway, let's see. What was I doing? Sorry. Oh, yeah, I got you. So we're going to go to security. And then we're going to go to session settings. And then under session settings, you want to scroll all the way to the top, all the way up when you get there, because they start you at the bottom for some reason. I don't know why. But then here, it's this one. Force re-login after login as user. Uncheck that box right there. And then we're going to save. I think it's all the way at the bottom of the page. So force re-login after login as user. Under session settings, uncheck that box. It's right here. All the way to the top, uncheck this box. Give me a yes when you get there.
Yes.
All right. Anybody need more time? So here's the desired outcome. When you go to manage users and users, you should now be able to log in as Joe, which I've done. And then when you log out as Joe, it should be you. Everybody give that a try. That will save you an inordinate amount of time. Anybody ever seen that before?
Yeah.
Good. If not, you're welcome. I just saved you 1,000,000 hours. First time I saw that, I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I've been doing it wrong for God only knows how long, you know. All right. So we've logged in as Joe. Oh, I killed Trailhead.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Sona. I'm not sure what, I think I missed some part when you were creating Joe. I missed that part. Can you just quickly tell me, so I went to manage users and clicked users.
Yep. Here's what he's got. You want to make sure that the email is yours, your email address, because that's where the login credentials are going to come to. And then you want the username to be something that's unique. Now, keep in mind, I've had thousands of clients, so you're going to have to get creative with the username, but it doesn't have to be real, just in the form of an email. The role, just leave none specified. The profile is custom sales.
So my profile doesn't show custom sales. It only has option of chatter external user.
What license do you show?
It has different, I have option of different licenses here, but I have chatter free, but I don't see the license of Salesforce here.
Have you created other users?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you'll have to deactivate that user. You only have 2 licenses available. So you can use, I mean, I would use this one. So go to your other user, deactivate that one, and then make Joe active. We can do that together. That's a good use case. Here, let me stop the share here, and then you share, and we'll do it together.
Okay.
What's that? Sorry, I didn't hear you there. So you should have a share button on the app, the Zoom application.
Yep. Can you see it?
No, I don't see. Did you hit the button? Share?
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. We're all going to have to get used to this now, right?
Yep.
This Zoom training is going to be pretty important moving forward. All right. So she's got the Salesforce license. Okay, you're looking at your user right now. Okay. So let's look under users. I want to see how many users. So manage users and users. That's admin. In the little list view in the top left-hand corner there where it says admin users, can you make it all users? Top left-hand corner. See where it says edit and create new view? Right next to it, there's a little drop down. This is what a classic list view looks like, by the way. Move your cursor down. See the little downward arrow? It says admin user right there. Do all users. There we go. All right, let's see.
Oh, right here. Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like you created a bunch of stuff here.
This is probably an old dev org, huh, Ryan?
She's in. Is this an old dev org you're in?
Yeah.
If I were you, I would create a new dev org.
Yeah.
From scratch. It's okay. Just go to up in the URL, type in Salesforce dev org sign up.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, do that because I don't know what you've done in here, and I don't want to get in a hairy situation because it can happen.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Hey, Ryan, whilst on that, with her org, quick question on this one. So is there a function in Salesforce where you can reset your org to default? I know it doesn't, you cannot delete the users, but if you delete it to, is it possible to delete everything back to, I guess, the defaults the org was when you first
yeah, if there's a way to do that, I am unaware.
Okay.
I'm not going to say never. If that would make my life a lot easier sometimes, because it's like, look, we just got to reset. It happens.
Okay.
In that situation, I'd probably get in touch with Salesforce directly and be like, hey, everybody, can we do this? Would it be better to just do another org and kill the old one? I don't know. I've never had that problem. Usually when I'm called in to play, I don't do a whole lot of org setup most of the time. They usually screw that up really bad themselves, and then I got to come in and fix it. Is usually, when I was talking about the plunge, what usually happens is they fall into the plunge, and then they stick in the plunge for some period of time, usually like 3 years or whatever, and then they call me in down here, and it's like same thing down here. But seldom do I get to set up an org from scratch, which is always the best. I mean, that's awesome when I can. I've done it a few times. Because Salesforce tells them they can do it themselves, right? Sure, you can do it yourself. They want those licenses. Okay, let's see. What were we doing? Oh, I was going back into Trailhead so I could see the agenda.
We also want them to make a decision in about 4 days too.
Oh yeah, they'll drive people nuts. They'll call them every day. My first Salesforce opportunity I had as a consultant, I went to Salesforce directly and said, hey, do you want to sit on this call with me? That was a huge mistake. I learned my lesson real quick on that one.
Can we check out Schema Builder real quick?
Sure.
I don't know if we're planning to revisit it or not.
Yeah.
So in the trailhead with the database design trail that you had us do.
Yep.
It seems like the Schema Builder is pretty rigid as far as making changes directly in it. Like if you want to add a new field, you have to go to another screen to be able to do that versus doing it directly in the Schema Builder. Is that right?
Oh, hold that thought, my friend. Just hold on to that. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
All right. You can totally develop from Schema. We're going to develop our whole app in Schema in this class, essentially. Not the whole thing, but the vast majority of it. So we're going to have a lot of Schema experience. They don't teach Schema. None of these orgs, none of these companies teach Schema because it's a little wonky and they're afraid you won't use it. I'm telling you, you have to use it. It's integral to building good applications quickly and efficiently. Without it, you're flying blind in the dark. And I did it for years. I didn't know about Schema until I was like 4 or 5 years in because nobody ever showed it to me. I mean, I'd seen it, but I was like, oh my God, I'm not touching that. I have no idea what that'll do, Okay, so we created a user, right? Assigned a license. Do you guys see the password reset button on the user record? See it here?
Yes.
Locked out user accounts. Okay, so now what I would like for you to do is log out as yourself. Well, first you need to go to Joe and get his username. So go to Joe's user record, grab his username from Joe's user record, and then log out as yourself. And then log back in as Joe, which is going to mean pasting your username in here. It was already in there. I hate how that thing pops up in front of me all the time. All right. Put in your username and then your password that you chose for Joe. And, oh, don't log in. You want to log in with the wrong password. That's what we're doing here. So if you did what I did, log out as Joe and then put in his username, but the wrong password like 4 times. Because we set our login attempts at 3. It just let me in. I totally fat fingered that and it just let me in. Okay, we'll still be able to see it. So once you've done it 3 or 4 times, try to log in as Joe 3 or 4 times with the wrong account, the wrong password, then log back in as yourself. Because what will happen is if they get locked out, the test will want you to know what to do. So here's the exact situation. They get locked out. They can't get in. They call me. I hate Salesforce. I can't get in. What are you going to do? Well, what everybody says is reset password, and that's not what they want you to understand. They want you to go to the user detail record for that user. And the key point of understanding here is, yeah, you can reset the password. But really what we want to do is go and look at the login history related list on the user detail record. So go scroll down and you'll see all the way at the bottom here, there is a login history related list. And if you do it enough times, if I'd have tried 4 times, it would have locked me out based on our password policies. Then what you'll have up here is another button that says unlock. Right now he's not locked out because I ended up logging in. Yours, if you did it properly and tried to log in 4 times with the wrong password, you'll see the password lockout and you'll see the unlock button. I'm going to try this again so I can make it look good for the video here. You guys can do it along with me.
Yeah, mine showed password lockout. I did it like 10 times, so it's password locked out 5.
Yeah. I just have too many words. And it really wants to make me do this properly. All right, one more for the road here. All right, so now if I log in as myself, way too many. $224, it's $324. Thanks. Why is it hiding from me? There it is. Okay, so now I can go back to my user's user detail record. And we can look at the login history related list. Click on the name, Joe. And then go all the way down. And we got password lockout. What do you do? Well, he tried to log in with the wrong password. So now you get some options. You can unlock, which means their password remains the same, which is what I'm going to do. You could reset password, which is going to send them a password reset verification email like the one that we got initially. There's also the idea of something called freeze. Freeze means that they're still active, but they can't log in. There's a number of reasons why you might do this. One would be if I'm doing maybe some sort of update and I don't want anybody logged in while I'm doing the update. Maybe it's Sunday night or something and I just want to make sure people aren't logged in when I make changes. That's a good use case for freeze. Anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, can you mass freeze everybody, or you're just going to have to use something else? Let's say you're doing an update over the weekend.
I have never done it before. I'm not sure. That'd be a good help and training question.
Now, Ryan, couldn't you just set the operational hours then? To, like for that user case, what he just said?
Sure, yeah, you could lock them out with login hours or IP ranges on the profile. He was talking about specifically freezing. You know, I don't know if I've ever done anything en masse with a button
Right.
before. I would assume you can do it with the data loader. I've just never done it. Most of the orgs I work with, just, you know, for the viewership here, have less than 100 users. I don't do a whole lot of work with large organizations because I don't have, you know, 500 resources here. If any of you have worked in larger enterprise level orgs and can answer some of these questions, please do, because I always learn something in these classes as well, every class. Anybody need more time? Okay. That's 10% of the exam we've covered. We will continue to review this stuff over and over. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, it's okay. We're going to continue onward, but we will continue to review the study guide over and over and over, demo it, talk about it, regurgitate the memorized facts until you feel pretty comfortable. So if you're brand new to this and this is pretty overwhelming, believe me, I understand, but we will continue to repeat this until you feel comfortable. So now we come to the most important part of the class. And I think, you know what, why don't we take like a little 10-minute break here to just have a moment to kind of reset, because this is going to be a major change from what we've been doing. So let's take 10. We'll come back at 25 after. So 3:25 p.m. EST. And somebody please remind me to restart the recording after we get back. I don't want to have 10 minutes of blank. All right. All right, we're back recording. Everybody back with me? Excuse me. All right. So here's what your problem's going to be. I already know what it's going to be. The problem is going to be that you don't understand the difference between access and permission. And this is going to continue until you get it. It's just one of those things. It's like the fundamental theorem of calculus. When they pull that variable from the clear blue sky, and you're like, whoa, what did you do? It's kind of like that. We just got to do it until you have that aha moment. So access, this side of the matrix, I call this the security matrix. Don't ask me how I came up with this. I just teaching it for a while and came up with it. But if this is my very poor drawing of a safe, like a safe you put gold bars in, for instance, it's saying, is the safe even open for you in the first place? Or another way of looking at it is saying that if somebody searches for a record in the global search bar, will it even return a result? That's access. Does it even exist in your universe as a user? That's access. Permission says, well, if the safe is open, what can you see and do with records in the safe? So this is, does it exist at all? And if so, what level does it exist? And then permission says, if it exists, what can I see and do with that record? So the hard part is getting to the point where you understand this quickly without having to do a whole lot of thought. That's the goal. The way I go about doing this is I go about it, being an engineering major, I go about it like a troubleshooting regimen. I was in industrial sales too. I sold valves and controls and motors and devices. But you got to have both. This side and this side, you got to have both access and permission. I'm going to go about this like I'm troubleshooting a machine. So the first thing I'm going to do, the first step in the troubleshooting regimen, and the first layer of security I'm going to look at in any situation, if somebody says, I need something, some visibility issue, I'm missing something, I'm always going to start on record ownership. I'm going to say, who is the record owner? Because if they own the record, that means they get what is known as full access. So the idea here is that we want to clear off the access side first. The highest level of access you can get, this is my nomenclature for full access, so I don't have to write it 1,000 times. So what it says is if you've got full access, you don't have to look at the access side of the matrix anymore. You've cleared that side. It's the highest level of access you can give. So I go to owner first. I want to see who owns the record, because if they own it, I know they have full access. That means I can skip anything else that has to do with access over here. So the idea is trying to get to this point somewhere in the process. I'm going to start here because it's the most common way of getting access. And it's the most complete way of getting access. So what is full access? Well, full access says that you have the access to view, edit, share, transfer, and delete. Now that doesn't mean you can actually do it. It means that the powers that be are going to allow you to do that if you have permission. The way I remember this is VESTD. For some reason it sticks. View, edit, share, transfer, delete. This is the access side. So then the next question becomes, all right, well, what do you get if you don't own the record? And that's going to be the second place that I look. I have it set as number 1 here. but this one kind of clears out access for me immediately. This is like the express pass up here. If it's not full access because they own the record, then we must count on what are known as OWDs to figure it out, or org-wide defaults. I'm going to type this out so I don't have to handwrite it. This is what you want to memorize, because what I've done here, the hardest part about all this is verbalizing it, right? You can understand the concept, but if you can't talk about it intelligently, you still look stupid. So what I've done is I've distilled these concepts down into the fewest amount of words I can come up with. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of and you don't sound like you know what you're talking about, even if you do. So here's what I would memorize. Org. Organization-wide defaults is equal to organization-wide defaults. And what it does is it manages object level records that a caps lock. There we go. Maybe should make it smaller. Maybe. Used to using another tool. But org-wide defaults manage the object level access to records that a user doesn't own. Try this again. That was pretty bad. Manages object level access to records that a user doesn't own. That's OWDs. Just memorize that. When we do our demos, you're going to demonstrate where the OWD is, and then you're going to say, I'm going to say, what do OWDs do? And you're going to say, they manage object level access to records that a user doesn't own. That's OWDs. Here they are in platform. OWDs are located under security and sharing settings. So setup, security, and then sharing settings. And they always hide on me now because they used to be closer to the top in Classic, and I'm always looking for them there. Anyway, sharing settings. What do OWDs do? OWDs manage object level access. See here? Object level access. These are all the objects. For records, because it's going to be at the record level, it's maintained at the object level, but it's really about the row, not the object. But we're going to set them for the object. So they manage the object level access to records that a user does not own. And they're controlled here by these default settings, these default internal access settings. This is the first layer of the onion. The first question is, all right, is anybody ever going to need a situation where they search for a record and cannot find it? For instance, if I've got California and Ohio, and I've got Joe in Ohio, and I've got Ryan in California, do we really care about each other's records?
No.
Probably not. In that case, you would want to set your OWDs to private, because OWDs being set to private means that only the user that owns the record has any access to it at all. For everybody else, it will not exist. we are restricting access down. And I mentioned that during the plunge, do we want to be more restrictive or less restrictive here? More restrictive, because I'm going to give access and permission through the plunge. So if they're set to private, only the user that owns it gets any access at all. Nobody else gets anything. What I'll have you do is, I'm going to open this up so you can see. Public read only means user has full, everybody else has read only. Public read write means user has full, everybody else has read and edit. Can they share?
No.
Nope. Can they transfer ownership?
No.
If they're set here, nope. Can they delete?
No.
Nope, just read and edit. Read, write, transfer is just like read, write, only they're transferring ownership of the record. So in a perfect world, what should every object be set to as far as OWDs?
Private.
Private, more restrictive. Tighten it all down, and that's what I'm going to have you do. Set everything to private. So navigate to your OWDs and make everything you see here private. Some of them will not have private, but most of them will. Do the closest thing to private. Like this one is hide details. This one is no access, but everything else is pretty much private. I told you I turned everything off. And I'm not kidding. They've added a ton of these on this last release. I couldn't tell you what 90% of it is. There we go. And then I think you got to do these as well. I think they got to match. So once everything is kind of tightened down and nailed down, hit save. And here's the desired outcome. Who owns all the records? Right now. You or Joe?
We do.
We do, right? So I do. I own all the records. If I own the records, what level of access do I have?
Everything, right?
Well, I've got full. If I own it, what's Joe going to have?
Nothing right now.
None.
Private.
So you'll notice up here this ribbon. If you see this, it's working. The change is working. It happened. You just got to wait until that goes away. You got to refresh your browser every now and then. You'll see the change. That's the thing with Lightning. The first step is always refresh the browser. There's a problem, refresh. Maybe even twice. So if Joe, oh, this thing is dancing here. I own the record, so I have full, right? Owner equals Ryan. That means Ryan gets full. What's that mean? View, edit, share, transfer, and delete. And then what we really want to know is, what is Joe going to see? We have access and permission here. What's Joe going to see? Well, what are our OWDs set to for, say, the lead object? We just set them, right? They're set to what?
Private.
Private. That means he has no access right now. Well, if he has access and some permissions, he's not even going to see the record at all. So Joe has no access. So what would we expect to see? Well, if we log in as Joe and look at, because I own all the records, so go to your users and then log in as Joe. Now, granted, he's still in Classic here. We haven't fixed that problem yet. But if I go to leads, hopefully that thing is finished as far as the changes. Yeah, he doesn't see anything, does he? Why not? Well, he doesn't own the record, and OWDs are set to private. So if a user doesn't have access, it doesn't matter what permissions they have. The record will not show for them at all. What I'd like for everybody to do is go ahead and do what I've done here. So set everything to private, log in as Joe, and make sure that he doesn't have any records. Thank you. If you get finished, let me know. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Ryan, and this might be a silly one because you may have answered this early on in the beginning of these meetings, but you keep saying have access to the record. Is it that because when you're referring to the record, are you referring to any object? I guess the record terminology is what's throwing me off is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, so if an object is a table, right, like an Excel sheet,
Yep.
the object is the whole table.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay, and then in Excel, what do we call the columns?
Records.
Well, these are fields.
Oh, fields, yeah. And then the rows.
So what we're looking at when I'm saying record is one row.
Got it.
Down here in Excel, they call these sheets. In Salesforce, we call them tabs, and they show up at the top of the page.
So wouldn't we be restricting access to the entire object then?
You are.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Okay.
But there are other ways to share access, right? We're just putting everything on lockdown, right?
Yep.
So we're saying, okay, nobody sees the record unless they are given access, unless they own it. That's what we're saying.
Got it.
And Ryan, can those permissions be overwritten with like Apex with sharing rules?
There is sharing. There's sharing in Apex, and sharing rules is going to be on the matrix. So I'm showing you one layer at a time here. Really quickly, I'll do a demo on the role hierarchy, and it might put things into perspective before the next class. So if OWDs manage object level access to records that a user doesn't own, the role hierarchy so access and permission, the first thing we checked was who the owner is. If they own it, what do they get?
All full access.
And what's that mean? They get the access to do what?
Read, write, edit.
Transfer.
View, edit, share, transfer, and delete, right?
Yep.
What are we transferring?
The record to somebody else.
Ownership, which means we're transferring what?
The owner's name.
No. Well, yes. It's changing their name on the record, right? But what are we really giving them when we transfer ownership?
Full access.
We're giving them the full access. So we hand the magic ball to them. Right? So we said, well, what if you don't own the record? Where's that controlled? That's OWDs. Private means the owner gets full, everybody else has none. Public read only, everybody gets read, owner gets full. Read write, owner gets full, everybody else gets read and edit. They can't share, they can't transfer, they cannot delete. Public read write transfer means you're transferring ownership, which means you're really transferring full access. The next thing we check, if OWDs are set to private, let's say for ops. If OWDs equal private, then do they get any access here? Nope. All right, so now I got to look at the role hierarchy. See why I check ownership first? It's like, oh, they already got it. I don't need to go through all this. So now I got to go to the role hierarchy. What does the role hierarchy do? the role hierarchy overrides OWDs using a system of roles and subordinates. So here's how I show this. You've got a role and you've got a subordinate. This relationship is in place, this kind of top-down vertical relationship here. If they own the record, they would have what level of access?
Full access.
What they do is they pass that access up to anyone above them in the hierarchy. They keep full access, but the user above them, assigned to a role above them, will also have full access, not only to that one object, but to all objects. So if I go to roles here, so set up users and roles, here's a pictorial example of the role hierarchy. So who's going to own the records here most likely? The reps, right? They're down here. Users, they are also a group of users. They're a template that can be assigned to a user or a group of users. So a role can be multiple people, and you assign them on the user detail record. So if the international sales director is the role, and the international sales rep is her subordinate, so if this role has some people in it, and this role down here, we're going to call this subordinate. Man, that's ugly. I'm trying to rush, and it shows. Subordinate. The rep owns the record, and it will pass up the hierarchy and let that role have full access. The reason that we do this is for reporting and dashboards. You don't want middle managers and executive staff owning records, but you do want OWDs to be private for the users that are going to need a situation where they don't need to see all the records. So I'm still going to set it to private, but I can override OWDs using this system of roles and subordinates. So let me give you an example of what it looks like. I'm going to hit the Setup Roles button at the top of the screen. Don't forget to expand all here. And what I'll do is I'm going to put myself, since I own all the records on Eastern Sales, by assigning the role. I own the records. That's the access that I want to pass up. And then Joe, I'm going to assign him as the director of direct sales. So he is a role in a role subordinate relationship with me. So what does that give Joe?
You can see all your records, right?
Yeah, he's got full access to all of the records, even though he doesn't own them and OWDs are private.
So, Ryan, in a real world situation, you know, if you were actually configuring this and you were giving the director access through the hierarchy, would you just do more of a read only and allow the rep to continue the full access?
That depends.
Yeah, right. Depends on the business requirement if the director is okay with that. But if, I guess, right, is that what
I
you're
want
about
it to be
say?
as restrictive as it possibly can be, as a rule. If they don't need edit, then I don't want to give them edit.
Got it. Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay.
What do you think Sam, who set this org up, what do you think he thought this was?
He thought that the executive probably should have all the access.
Well, no. What if he walked into Salesforce on day one, never looked at it before? What would he think it was?
Built-in hierarchy?
It looks like an org chart, doesn't it?
Right, right.
This is a serious red flag. Because what does it mean if you have this big, long, drawn-out role hierarchy and no one assigned to it? What is it effectively doing?
Allowing full, well.
Now, if nobody's assigned to it, what is it?
That's nothing.
That's about, what, 3 hours of work?
Yes.
But it doesn't do anything.
Yes.
Right? So if I go into an org and I go into the org, the role hierarchy, and I see an org chart, or I mean, I see somebody just stuck an org chart in there and didn't assign anybody to it, I know that there was a problem. Right?
Yeah.
What does it really do? Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the role hierarchy is an org chart. And I still find myself doing that occasionally. The role hierarchy is doing one thing, well, two things. It's passing full access up the chain. And it's also allowing us to group when we share. There's no horizontal movement, only vertical movement through the hierarchy. What I mean by that is if I go to roles here, maybe I gotta go somewhere else first. I want to see the.
I'm actually listening to a class. Okay.
So what I'm saying is there's no movement this way. Eastern sales doesn't see international sales. There's no side-to-side movement. If you're in the same role, if I've got one person and then another person, and they're both assigned this international sales rep role, they don't share with each other. It's just up the chain, and it's always ownership-based. So if I was doing my drawing again, I went too far. So who owns it? What do they get? They get full. What's that? View, edit, share, transfer, delete. It still doesn't mean they get to do it, but they have the access to do it. Well, what if I don't own the record? Well, that's dependent on OWDs. What are they set to? If they're set to private, I got to go further and get the access level I need. What's the role hierarchy do? It overrides OWDs using a system of roles and subordinates. What's the highest level of access that it can pass up?
Full access.
Full access. It's also a template. It can be assigned to a user or a group of users. This means group of users. What I'm saying here is there is a finite number of ways that we use a group of users. So if in a test question it says sales representatives or marketing executives or product managers, the first question you got to ask yourself is, all right, that's a group of users. Which one is it? Because the two main ones are going to be these two. The role and the profile are both groups of users. One is on the access side, one is on the permission side. So when you see sales representatives in a test question, you should immediately think, oh, that's a group of users. We're talking about roles or profiles, which is really, what are you asking?
Wait, Ryan, can you say that one more time? Sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Okay, so if you see sales representatives in a test question, I'm going to be like, all right, that's a keyword. They are a group of users. And I'm immediately thinking, is it roles or profiles? Which means, what am I really asking? Is it access or permission?
Right. It's access.
So anytime you see a group of users, you immediately want to refer to, all right, roles or profiles. You want to go right to the security matrix because it's always going to be security somewhere. So I'll stop there with the new stuff. Let's get a homework assignment. I'll go back over that on Thursday. That was a quick and dirty, as we say. Okay. If I go to Trailhead, what I would like for you to do is find, I think it's in admin beginner. I always get them confused, admin and developer, because they're very, very close together and they share modules. Too much open. See that? Admin beginner, I think. If not, it's in developer beginner. And of course, it's in developer beginner. So search for developer beginner. You'll notice you've already completed some of it if you've done the homework. And, oh man. Oh, here, right here. Developer beginner. I was looking at the list of trails. I gotcha. They change his interface an awful lot, so don't be surprised if I don't know what's going on. Data security. Here we go. So let's do overview and control access to the org. Now, it's important to note that Salesforce uses the words access and permission interchangeably. You have to decide which one they're actually talking about when you see the word access especially. They don't teach it the way I do. They probably should. You'll see why. But let's do these first two modules before we meet again next week. I'll have the recording up as soon as humanly possible. I've got 4 minutes for a question, if anybody has one. If not, hopefully I will see you all again Thursday.
Ryan, you said that the Salesforce will use them interchangeably. I'm just looking at it and trying to understand what you mean by that.
If you see the word access in a Salesforce test question, you should immediately think, are they talking about access or permission?
Got it. Got it.
They will say access when they mean permission.
Oh. Got it. Okay. Access could mean access or permission.
Yeah, when you see access, that keyword is like a red flag to me. It's like, all right, what are they talking about?
Got it.
And some other keyword is going to define that for you.
Okay.
Everybody okay? Anybody completely overwhelmed? It's okay if you are. I hope not, because the water is going to get deeper. So if you have problems, let me know. Get in touch with me. I'd be happy to spend some time.
Okay, can we get a pictorial overview of all this security model? Like,
you want to see the whole thing?
In a pictorial way.
Okay, so I mean, here's where we're gonna end up. Five is sharing rules. There's a bunch. We'll talk about all of them. And then 6 is field level security. Looks a lot like that. And there's more to it than this. I add to this. I try to get everything into this drawing that you need to know about security to pass the exam and be effective, is the thought process here. This side of the matrix is additive. And so is this side, barring the bottom down here. So these add up. So if at any point you get to full access, you're done. If not, you got to add up what you've got and say, all right, well, I've got read-only access, right? So let's say all of these add up and you get read-only over here. And then over here, you've got create, read, edit, and delete. What are you going to get? Well, you're only going to get read-only because you got to have access and permission. You got to have both. So we're going to just continue on with this over and over until we get it. It might take a couple of classes to really get security down, but it's the only way to learn it effectively, is to just demo it. So starting on Thursday, what we'll do at the beginning of class, take any questions on the homework, and then we'll dive right in. Each one of us is going to demo security. We're going to demo OWDs. I'll talk briefly again about roles, and then so the first person will do OWDs. I'll do the role hierarchy again, and then someone else is going to do OWDs and then the role hierarchy. And then we'll do profiles. And then the next person will do OWDs, role hierarchy, and profiles. And we'll just keep doing that, demoing it. And eventually we'll all get good enough at it to where it's kind of a second nature situation. I mean, the alternative is trailhead exercises and slides. But if you want, go ahead and try this whole thing. on your own. If you have the time, try the whole thing. See how confusing it is before I show you a way to kind of break it down. That might be useful as well. Go ahead and try them if you have the time. But you're going to find pretty quickly that it's confusing and you're not going to know what to do. So my process is, here's the step-by-step process that works every time in any visibility situation. Start at the top left and go all the way through the steps, just like you're troubleshooting a machine. And you'll find it. It's usually the profile, frankly, the problem. Usually the problem is found in the profile, but not always. It could be any of the other layers. And it's right at 4. I have a hard stop. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you being here with me today. I hope everybody remains healthy and safe. And we will see you in a couple of days to continue our deep dive into security. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.